Hi Lionheart folks, it's Lev. Welcome back to another video. For those of you who are new, I use he and pronouns. It's been like 2 months since I made YouTube videos. I feel a little rusty, but I needed a break from it, and I think I'm gonna start slowly reintroducing creating YouTube content back into my schedule, for lack of better words, because I've just been feeling very overwhelmed and I just needed to park YouTube and content creation for a little while until I start feeling like I'm constantly trying to keep my head above water. Yeah, and today's video I want to talk about WPATH gender assessment and breaking it down and my experience with it. For those of you who are new and this is your first video, I'm a trans man and I'm getting gender affirming top surgery in less than 2 months. October. Yes, and as part of this gender affirming top surgery process, the surgeon requires a report from a clinical psychologist or a psychiatrist basically saying that I'm psychologically healthy to make this decision and basically that I have gender dysphoria. So I'm going to break down my experiences and talk about that a little bit. If the audio quality from my intro is different to now, it's because I just disconnected my mic because it has that weird background noise thing and it's really annoying. So I'm just gonna increase volume in post. So the WPATH gender assessment. So that consists of 3 sessions with my clinical psych who's basically trained to do gender assessments and work with trans people in terms of reports and stuff for medical transition and a bunch of other things, but in my case for top surgery. And the first session was this was 3 1-hour sessions plus 1 report review session. Yes. The first session was basically just her trying to get to know me, like who I am, my trans experiences, background, like family, education, just social circumstances, just like a big picture. Who is Lev and what is his life like, what are his circumstances, what was his past like, what was growing up like, just basically history of me and who I am and whatnot. The second session is where we started the actual assessment using the assessment tools, which I will talk about a little bit later. It was a very long, comprehensive document, bunch of different questionnaires and assessments, and we went through that together. We didn't actually go through it, get time to do all of it together. She emailed me the remaining parts I need to fill out, and I emailed it back to her. The third session was going through like the assessment itself. Like I sent her back the results, she looked through it and whatnot, and that third session was just clarifying things that I was unsure of, like I left blank because I'm not sure how to answer this question, and she was just telling me a bit about her thoughts, like her interpretation of the results based on clinical judgment and whatnot. And then yesterday I had the final report review meeting. Basically she'd written up the report and I was just reading through it and to finalize to see if I want to add anything, change anything, something doesn't sit well with me, for example. That was all good, finalized, and now I have the final report, and the WPATH aspect of this report for top surgery is done. That's just an overview. Now I'm going to break down the report and the gender assessment, just talk a bit about what it involves, what type of questions they ask, etc. Now I'm just going to start talking about the gender assessment itself, and I'm looking off my old phone, and if I'm looking down it's because I'm basing stuff off this, because I'm reading stuff off this. First page is like intro to the assessment. It breaks down the 4 categories of the assessment. A, general information about you, circumstances, history, gender identity. B, questions about your current general psychological and emotional well-being. C, what strengths and resources you might draw upon. And D, specific specific information about gender history, and transition. Sometimes I talk really fast and then I stumble on my own words. Yeah, so that was that. And it's just like the WPATH one. It's like they have to do it according to WPATH guidelines, which is World Professional Association for Trans Health. All right. So general info is just like my employment circumstances, am I in a relationship, am I on medication, have I sought professional mental health before, assigned sex at birth, when I started realizing I wasn't cis or identifying as a guy, and some of the questions are like fill in. Some of the questions are scale based, like how do you feel from 1 to 5. Some of the questions are yes, no, unsure questions. So this is still part of like the general information. This is like still the first section. It asks about, I'll just read the question to give you an idea. Quote, for each of the following transitioning actions commonly taken to affirm gender identity, please indicate whether you have 1, already taken this step, and if not 2, if you tend to in future, unquote. Some of the examples are coming out to family, coming out to friends, legally changing name, wearing clothes that match gender identity, changing documents legally, like legally recognized sex, am I on hormones, have I had gender affirming surgery before, and then the long open answer question is, quote, for any of the above transition steps you have already taken, please describe any benefits and or problems you have experienced as an adult, unquote. That's just, and then there's a question about, is there anything else relevant to the gender assessment you'd like me, as in the clinical psychologist, to know? So that's the first part of it. Next part of it is about psychological and emotional well-being. So there's like the DASS scale, which is the depression, anxiety, stress scale. So it's like it's like a Likert scale questions. Like, for example, please read each statement and select number 0, 1, 2, or 3, which indicates how much the statement has applied to you over the past week. For example, I found it hard to wind down. If it's 0, it means do not apply to me at all. If it's a 3, it means apply to me very much, or most of the time. And it's just different questions about us, like about anxiety, stress, and depression, for example. Another example is, I felt I was losing a lot of nervous energy. I felt like I wasn't worth much as a person. It's just like general mental health, mental well-being screening, basically. The next section is interesting. If I'm looking down, I'm looking down a lot because I'm reading off this. Next section is, quote, this questionnaire consists of 28 questions about experiences that you may have in your daily life. We are interested in how often you have these experiences. It is important, however, that your answers show how often these experiences happen to you when you are not under the influence of alcohol or drugs, unquote. And this one is scale question. It's 0% is never, 100% is always. For example, some people find that sometimes they're listening to someone talk and they suddenly realize that they did not hear part or all of what was said. I should also say that in this whole gender assessment package, it's not just gender, like questions about gender identity. There was like a borderline personality disorder screen, an autism spectrum disorder screen, just like a screening thing with like a bunch of questions for it as well, because part of the gender assessment is not just about assessing like for gender dysphoria and whatnot. it's about mental health as well, and whether someone is like in the right headspace to undergo medical transition, in my case top surgery, because it can be a lot. And like it also assesses for social support, if anyone to support me post top surgery, like physically, emotionally, what are my support circles like, because it can be very demanding and I would need support for it. So it assesses a bunch of things. Yeah. Anyway, and that's that section. And then the next part is borderline personality disorder screening. For example, yes or no questions. For example, does your sense of who you are often change dramatically? Have you tried to... Actually, never mind that question. Do you have a lot of sudden mood changes? Do even little things get you angry? Do your relationships with people you really care about have a lot of extremes up and downs? This is like a borderline personality disorder or BPD screening. The next one is an autism spectrum screening. For example, I find it easy to read between the lines when someone's talking to me, and I find it difficult to work out people's intention. It's like it's a brief screening of 10-15 questions. 15 questions for BPD and 10 questions for autism. This is not like... I should also say that my psych who did this for me was saying like she's not diagnosing me with BPD or ASD, or saying I don't have it, or saying that I do have it, because that's beyond her scope of expertise. But I think they just included in here just in case something comes up and it warrants the person seeking more appropriate support for it. This thing is like 23 pages long. It's very comprehensive. The next part is a true false. I'm literally going through all of the sections. True false answer format with the description is listed below. Quote, listed below are a number of statements concerning personal attitudes and traits. Read each item and decide whether the statement is true or false as it pertains to you. Unquote. For example, I've never intentionally disliked anyone. I am always careful about my manner of dress. I like to gossip at times. I'm always willing to admit when I make a mistake. I have never felt that I was punished without cause, etc. Right, the next section of the gender assessment is about strengths and resources, and I think this is important. I think this is part of this. So, as I mentioned before, going through surgery is not necessarily a very easy process. It's important to have support and, assess the person's strength and how they're able to cope with surgery itself and the healing and recovery journey afterwards. Yeah. So this one is a scale question, not in form of numbers, but like very strongly disagree to very strongly agree. For example, my family really tries to help me. I have a special person who is a real source of comfort to me. My family is willing to help me make decisions, etc. It's a lot. I mentioned it's a lot. The next section, when I say section, I mean like it's a block of questions. The next section is a different block of questions. Next section is a different block of questions. Next one is about how well I feel connected to the trans community. It's like questions about how I feel connected and understood in certain spaces and within the trans community. Next block of questions is about resilience and how easily I bounce back from difficult situations. I feel like if I read out every question, it might be a little too tedious. That's why I'm just shortening it. because yeah, because I want to go through my report a little too and just give you an idea about what is in the actual final report. And I'm not showing it all this because I don't know if I'm allowed to, and I don't want to show my actual report because that's private and I don't want to put that online. So the next block of question section is about how people cope with stress in life, not including gender dysphoria. So the stress or distress and stress is not gender dysphoria, like it's asking about general life outside of gender dysphoria. I'll give some examples for this because there's a lot. Two examples. Example one, I've been trying to see myself in a different light to make it seem more positive, and this one is a rating from 1 to 4 question set. Another example is I've been expressing my negative feelings, right, from 1 to 4. Okay. The last section of the gender assessment package itself is about gender identity and gender expression. For example, how these are all rating questions, like on a scale. It's not no open-ended questions, so they're just on a scale, you rating from unimportant to extremely important, or none to very strong, along those lines. Examples. In the past 2 weeks, how often have you thought about gender? In the past 2 weeks, has it upset you when you have had to answer questions about what sex or gender you are, e.g. filling in forms? In the past 2 weeks, has your sense of what gender you are changed from one day to the next? This is from a different survey under the same gender category. Over the past 6 months, how intense was your discomfort because your primary and or secondary sex characteristics do not match your gender identity? Another one, this one's agree or disagree, still about gender and expression. My outward appearance represents my gender identity. The way my body currently looks does not represent my gender identity. And there's another section, different block of questions about different body parts, like parts of anatomy, and it asked me to rate how dissatisfied I am with that part of me, from very dissatisfied to very satisfied. For example, it literally lists like nose, shoulders, hip, chin, calves, breast, hands, Adam's apple, height, thighs, arms, eyebrows, a whole list basically, and I rate how dissatisfied and how unsatisfied I am with each one. And the last little section is about gender expression as a child. So that is the gender assessment package. It's very long and very comprehensive, but that's what my clinical psych used to actually base info off and write the report. Yes. Now I'm going to talk about the actual report itself, what it includes, and read a little bit about what is included in the actual final WPATH gender assessment report. And this report goes to my surgeon who's going to do top surgery for me. Okay, I was just making sure I was recording. Cool. It's just basic deal. My name, date of birth, the person who assessed me, reason for the assessment, methods used, basically the 3 sessions I had with my therapist, consent, and like basically it's including the report that I consented to the assessment and report writing process. Then the first long bit is brief client background. So all the info she gathered from talking to me about my past, my history, my experiences, the assessments themselves goes in this client background section. For example, this part I don't mind reading. This is part of the report itself. Lev reports feeling isolated as a child and experienced lowered mood and heightened anxiety during schooling years. He was bullied at school and experienced physical health problems, limping because of leukocytosis elastic vasculitis, for which he was hospitalized in high school. At age 17, Lev sought psychiatric support for suicidality, mood, and anxiety. He reports this was helpful. That's just a little example section of what's written. Here, this is also what's written. This is like separate paragraph. Lev began questioning his gender in 2016, although he attributed some of his experiences as coming out as sexually diverse rather than his gender identity. He came out as gay in 2017. Another line from this report, I'm not reading the whole paragraph because it's a bit long and some of it's like I don't want to share on YouTube. Lev does not bind because he is able to minimize his chest through clothing, and he feels binding would make him more aware of his chest and increase dysphoria, which is true. I don't bind. I've never binded because of that reason. Cool. That's an idea of what was written in the brief client background section. Next section is testing and diagnostic impressions. And it was mentioned the different scales that were used to assess me, talk about gender dysphoria, and the last line in this little paragraph is Lev meets the diagnostic. Wait, let me say the whole sentence. Based on these results, and my opinion based on the clinical assessment conducted, Lev meets diagnostic criteria for gender dysphoria in adolescents and adults. And then talked about my results on the DAS, which is mood, the stress, anxiety, depression scale. The next little section is about a mental state exam. It's basically my dress, grooming, eye contact, speech, all of that stuff is part of the mental state examination. And then the last paragraph is the clinical opinion. The clinical opinion, like overall, basically conclusion of this whole assessment and whether my clinical psych believes that I can proceed with top surgery based on her clinical assessment of me throughout this whole process. And the last line in this paragraph is Lev fulfills the criteria to undergo top affirmation surgery as specified in the WPATH Standards of Care version 7. So yes, that's the whole gender assessment process. Now I'm done with the WPATH report. It's finished. It's emailed to my surgeon, and I don't do anything else from here regarding that. And I have a pre-surgery consult next month, and then a month later after that, I have top surgery. So I have top surgery in less than 2 months, and yeah. I know this video is very long, but I hope it's been helpful to at least one person out there, whether you are trans and gender diverse yourself and are going through the process of needing a gender assessment for medical transition stuff, or any whatever reason there might be, or if you're cisgender and an ally and just watching this to get more insight into the process itself, etc. I hope this video has been helpful to at least one person out there, and if it has, I'm a happy guy. As I always tend to say, if my videos help at least one person out there, then I'm happy. Yeah. And if anyone would like to reach out or have questions about this whole gender assessment process, or have like to clarify something I said in my video, feel free to leave a comment or email me. and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. And thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video whenever that may be.